Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is Open Mic. Now, what is Open Mic? Well, you see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we take the second half of the show to take your live questions. However, on Open Mic here on the weekends, that's all we do, is take live questions. And guys, I hope you are having a fabulous weekend already, and you got things lined up that are going to be fun and relaxing, and getting caught up on things you meant to do. Whatever it is you want this weekend to be, I hope this weekend can be for you. Now, of course, for me, I'm also very much looking forward to the UFC fights tonight. I mean, it's been a great week of fight night. We had UFC on Saturday. We had a UFC on Wednesday. We got another UFC tonight. It's been great, especially with the lack of all the other sports going on in the world right now. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. All right, guys, listen, before we get into the live questions, and you guys, we got a ton of them lined up already, I wanted to talk about something. Now, I think it was either on yesterday's show or 2 days ago. You know, this month, I believe, is the 10-month anniversary of the M. Night Shyamalan's masterpiece, Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is the 10th anniversary of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, last show or 2 shows ago, I can't remember exactly, somebody brought up and said, somebody brought up Last Airbender and said, how M. Night insulted the audience, and he spit in the audience face with the movie and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I said at the time was, I really don't believe that. Now, you guys know I am not the world's biggest M. Night Shyamalan defender. You guys know this. But I said, I don't believe that for a second. I really do believe M. Night wanted to make a great movie. I think he clearly wanted to make a great movie that people would enjoy, particularly fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and he just didn't succeed, right? All you can ask somebody to do is try, be gutsy, do your best, and hopefully it works out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I never thought for a second, to be honest with you, in the 10 years that it's been since I've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, I never thought for a second that M. Night ever went out of his way to purposely try to, bother the fans of Avatar or anything like that, and all that kind of stuff. The movie's terrible, but last night, Ann and I, we had to go run a few errands, and when we got home, and it was about 9 o'clock at night that we got home, and it's like, we were both tired. Ann wanted to get up for a big early hike this morning, so I thought, what, do you mind? I want to pop on, honey, the first couple of minutes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Would you mind if I do that? I feel like I just want to watch a couple, because I haven't seen it in like 10 years. I just want to get a little, now that I've seen the animated series, because when the movie came out 10 years ago, I had never seen the animated series. I just finally watched the animated series like a month or 2 ago, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. So I thought, you know what? Would you mind if I watched a little bit of this? She said, sure. So I pop it on, hit play, and I run to the kitchen to get myself a drink. And, I pull the drink out, get the ice and whatever. And as I'm doing that, 30 seconds into the movie, I put this up on Facebook, 30 seconds into the movie, all I hear is my wife's voice, Ann, who knows nothing about the movie. You understand? My wife knows nothing. She's familiar with the show. She doesn't know anything about the movie. She never saw it. She doesn't know anything about it. And my wife, of course, is Asian. And she's Filipino. And I'm in the kitchen, and 30 seconds into playing, all I hear is my wife's voice from the living room. Why are they white? And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a part of the big controversy of that movie too, wasn't it? Anyway, I just thought that was funny. So anyway, I sit down to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I had a couple of thoughts watching it, and I ended up watching it all the way through. I decided not just to watch the first few minutes. I decided to watch the movie all the way through. So I did. And I had a couple of thoughts about Avatar: The Last Airbender that I wanted to share. The movie, I wanted to share a couple of thoughts. First thing is first. This is an absolutely terrible movie. I mean, that hasn't changed. And I remember I thought it was an absolutely horrendous movie when I first saw it, and I'd never seen the animated series. Having now watched the animated series and 10 years later watching the movie again, I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. I mean, it's really bad. And one of the big things about it, and you don't often hear this about a movie, like even when you have bad movies, you can say, oh yeah, but the performances were pretty good. And somebody wrote in the other day to say that exact same thing, saying, you know what, the performances in The Last Airbender weren't good. And you ain't wrong. The performances in The Last Airbender are terrible. Absolutely terrible. The performances are awful, with one or two minor exceptions. All right, first of all, this kid, Noah Ringer, who didn't do anything again. I mean, after Noah Ringer played Aang, he later went on to be in that really also awful Cowboys and Aliens movie that came out 1 year later, and he hasn't really done anything since. Nicola Peltz, who was also in the Transformers movie, she was really bad in as Katara. She was really bad, and she's gotten better. I've seen her in some other stuff recently. She's gotten quite better, but in that movie, she was quite bad. Jackson Rathbone, who was coming from Twilight as Sokka, terrible. And he's actually not a bad little actor. Rathbone's not a bad little actor, to be honest with you, but terrible in that movie. Two minor exceptions. One, Dev Patel wasn't bad. See, with Dev Patel playing Prince Zuko, the problem with that was you could tell the script and the story. The performance he was bringing wasn't all that bad. But I'll tell you what was the one really good performance in it. And I'm not saying they did the character well, but the one good performance in Avatar: The Last Airbender was, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, but as Sean Taub. Now, Sean Taub played Uncle Iroh. And his performance was actually really quite good. Like, I'm watching him as Iroh, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is a very different Iroh than the Iroh we say got in the animated series. Yes, it's a very different Iroh, but that's just the way it's written. As far as it goes, Sean Taub is actually doing a really good job acting this. Like, there's this one scene in a movie when he finds out about the moon and the ocean spirits, whatever. And he's like, to meet a spirit would be a great honor. Just the way he said it was actually really quite good. But and by the way, Sean Taub is the same actor. If that name sounds familiar to you, he's the same actor who played Yinsen in the original Iron Man movie. The guy who saves Tony Stark's life at the beginning and helps him build the Mark I first Iron Man. That's the same actor who did that. Only he looks way different in Avatar: The Last Airbender. He's got the long hair going and stuff like that. I thought he was pretty good, but this movie was terrible. But I wanted to share one of the other things that really stood out to me watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, the movie again. Having now watched the show and now watching the movie again, I really want to say this. What M. Night tried to do with that movie, at minimum, was incredibly ambitious. And at its best, was one of the ballsiest things I've seen a filmmaker try to do. Now, we've already established what the end result was. It's a terrible movie. And I'm sure it has its fans. All film is subjective. From my point of view, it's absolutely terrible. I know a lot of you guys feel it's absolutely terrible. But watching that movie again, having just watched the show, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I'm watching these earthbenders doing, the classic stuff and they're like bringing up the earth, blocking shots, the movements, rock coming up and flying at other people. I'm seeing all the stuff they're doing with the water bending and the air bending and the stuff they're trying with the fire bending and trying to show Aang with his stick glider and running up alongside of walls and blah, blah. And I'm watching this and I have to admit, I'm thinking to myself, what was anybody thinking even trying to make this a live action movie? This is I'm watching this and I'm thinking, this would have been very, very difficult. Like, and I don't know that a lot of filmmakers would have been able to step up and say, I'll do an Avatar: The Last Airbender, especially 10 years ago. And I think despite the fact that the results were terrible, I gotta say, I watched that movie and at the end of it, I literally picked up my drink off the table that was in front of me and I raised my glass symbolically and I said, hey, look, M. Night. I often have some pretty critical things to say about M. Night, but I had to raise my glass and go, you know what? Damn, kid. You even trying to make that movie, as you realize watching it in live action, really what the monumental Herculean almost task it would be to really take a full season of Avatar: The Last Airbender with all of its visual uniqueness and stuff like that and try to make a live action single feature film out of it. I gotta say, I raised my glass to say, you know what, M. Night, that was ballsy. It was ballsy and it was ambitious, and he went for it. I mean, the results were terrible, but he went for it. And you know what? It's kind of funny too, because right up to the moment that I heard my wife, as the movie started, yell, "Why are they white?" I haven't really given it much thought. And I'll tell you this: I'm not all that bothered by the race change. You know me, I never care about race chaining. Michael B. Jordan, Superman, do it. Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, do it. Like I really don't care all that much about it. But I saw and I recognized what M. Night was going for, at least. Like he seemed to take the approach of, why would everybody in that world be the same race? So what he did was he predominantly made Earth Kingdom characters Asian. Then he made Fire Nation Indian, reflecting his own heritage. So you had Dev Patel and whatever. So he made them primarily Indian. He made Water Nation primarily white. And then Air Nation, when they did flashbacks, they were a whole mix. The Air Nation was like a whole mix of different races. And, even now in hindsight, I look at that, and although some people won't like what I'm about to say, I look at that and thought, you know what? I see what M. Night was going for there. I see what he was going for there. Would it have been better to have Katara and Sokka and Aang, who were Asian in the show, as Asian characters? Probably. But at the end of the day, I saw what he was doing, that each nation was kind of represented with different ethnicities, and he was trying to mix it up, and I still don't have a problem with that. I know many people do. I think my wife does. I know many people do. But at the end of the day, I didn't really have a problem with it. So, to conclude, my friends, my fellow film-loving friends, to conclude, The Last Airbender is every bit as awful as I remember it being from 10 years ago. It's every bit as awful as I remember it being. If I wouldn't put it on my unholy trinity of the three worst wide-release cinematic films of all time, which are Highlander 2, Battlefield Earth, and Catwoman, but it's up there. It's a truly awful movie. But, like a lot of bad movies, I also think there are things in there for us to look at and at least appreciate. I appreciate one or two decent performances in the movie. Sean Taub is the highlight to me for that, playing Iroh. I appreciate what, at least symbolically, what M. Night was going for with changing up races within that world. Not everybody agrees, and I appreciate that, and I see where you're coming from. But on a basic level, I kind of appreciate what it was he was at least trying to represent. But most of all, I walked away with a kind of a sense of admiration for M. Night, to be honest with you, because making that movie was gutsy. And he truly tried. I mean, say whatever we want about that movie, M. Night tried. And it's going to be interesting to see, a new live action adaptation that's coming to Netflix with the producers of the original animated series. But by the way, they were also the producers of the M. Night movie as well. Don't forget that. But it's going to be interesting to see now that M. Night went out and tried it, and lessons can be learned. And you can look at it. Now we've got an example to see what worked, what few things worked, what things didn't work. And now we can get a better idea of trying again 10 years later to see if we can make something special. And it's going to be interesting to see where things go. So those are just kind of some of my reflections, guys, on revisiting 10 years later, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action film. Guys, what do you guys think about it? Jump into the comments and let me know. All right, guys, listen, with all that down, let's now get into the whole purpose for Open Mic here, and let's get to your live questions. And we're going to start things off with a couple that were left over from yesterday. Ryan Lohner writes in, the record for most Oscar nominations, yes, I remembered this after the show was done. The record for most Oscar nominations is actually 14, a three-way tie between All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land. Yes. What happened, we were talking about a movie yesterday, had 11 nominations. I'm like, was that the record? What I was thinking about was the record for most Oscar wins is 11. And that's why I got my wires crossed there for a second. So there are actually 3 motion pictures in history to win 11 Academy Awards. You have Ben-Hur, you have Titanic, and you have Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Those are the 3 movies that have won the most Oscars in cinematic history. And I don't know when you're going to see another. I don't know if we'll ever see another film win 11. I mean, those 3 movies were so dominant in their years. I don't know if we're ever going to see it happen again. But yes, I was thinking when the 11 and Oscars came up, my head went to most wins. But you're right. Most Oscar nominations is 14. Well pointed out, Ryan. All right. Let's see. Next up, Troy Kales writes, "Hey, John and crew. With movie theaters likely staying closed until mid-next year, would releasing larger budget movies on streaming services but charging a single watch fee would work? And would big budget films like Marvel, etc. actually consider this?" No, it wouldn't work. It basically comes down to this. People want to go out to watch movies. Like for a lot of average moviegoers, you and I, we make up 5%. You and I make up the 5% of the harder core movie fans who will watch movies anywhere, anytime. But a lot of the average movie-going audience, will feel like they'll want to make a night out of it. But the bigger reason is this, and again, this goes back to that Hollywood Reporter studio head roundtable video that's up on YouTube, where all the heads of the studios talk about this. But one of the main problems is this. When we're not in a pandemic and a big UFC fight is on, I rent the fight, and then I have like 12, 13, 14, 15 people come over, and we all watch the fight. That's part of the reason why UFC charges $60, because they know not just one person is watching it, everybody's going to have a house full of people to go watch it. So let's say they wanted to release, I don't know, a James Bond movie straight to VOD. Well, how much are you going to charge for it? You can charge $20 for it? To rent it for a one-time viewing? Okay, let's say you do that. Guess what? I'm going to have 6 or 7 people over to watch it. So you've just made, you just lost 80% of your revenue. And I think you're going to find a lot of people will do that. Not to mention the cut that the streaming services take, although it's not as big as the cut that the movie theaters take, but there's still a cut that the streamers take. You still got to advertise the hell out of it. And they're just going to lose money. And if they thought there was a way they could do that and make money, they would have done it already. But they know there's really not. But we're living in weird times here, Troy. We're living in weird times. And then you might say, well, don't charge $20, charge $50. Well, guess what? 90% of the movie-going audience, even if it's at home, even if they have their whole family, 90% of the movie-going audience is not going to pay $50 to watch a movie once. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Just that simple. There's the 5 to 10% of you and me that maybe would, but 90% of the average movie-going audience won't do that. So anyway, but right now we are living in unprecedented times, right? We talked yesterday on the John Campea Show about how the one analyst is saying that they're now adjusting their forecasts. It's saying they may think that movie theaters may not open till mid-2021. Now, we don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but if that happens, if movie theaters are going to be closed till mid-2021, what was impossible yesterday becomes kind of possible today. Under normal circumstances, no, the whole idea of taking like a movie like a James Bond movie or taking a Marvel movie and dropping it on streaming and for what it's a preposterous, wouldn't happen. But in this current context, maybe. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of back in the day. People would ask, hey, could we ever see, Spider-Man in the MCU? And I would say, no, it's impossible. Sony's not going to give that up. There's no way it's going to happen. Not going to happen. But for those of you guys who were watching me back in the AMC days, once Sony got into big financial trouble, and there was all that turmoil that Sony was in, and there were reports that they may go bankrupt and all that kind of stuff. Once that happened, then I remember getting on Movie Talk and going, you know what? Desperate times, desperate measures. Maybe, I still don't think they will, but maybe we will see Spider-Man in the MCU at some point now because the circumstances changed. And then, lo and behold, it happened. They made a deal and we got Spider-Man appearing in MCU movies. Sony still has Spider-Man, but they're letting him appear in MCU movies. And so, with the reports coming out that theaters could stay closed until 2021, mid-2021, that's one of those pieces of information that kind of changes the way you need to look at things. So whereas just a few weeks ago, I would say, no, never happen. Never happen. You ain't gonna see Disney dropping Black Widow on a streaming thing. No way. But that was in a world where it looked like the theaters may open in July or August, maybe September. If we're talking about a world where movie theaters aren't going to be opened until March, April, May, June, July of 2021, that fundamentally changes the question. So, I would say this. I still doubt it, Troy. I still highly doubt it. But it ain't impossible. These new circumstances, the new context we find ourselves in, if that summer of 2021 thing becomes a reality, then what was impossible yesterday might be your best option. And I'll tell you what, putting out a big budget movie straight on streaming like that, they're going to lose money. But sometimes a bad option becomes your only option. Sometimes a bad idea becomes the only idea available to you. And if the movie theaters are indeed going to stay closed till mid-2021, what is a bad idea of really trying to release a big budget movie that was meant for theatrical release and just dropping it on streaming somewhere to try to recoup some of your money? That was a terrible idea. But it might be your only option. So it might. Again, I'm still going to stick with, I doubt that'll happen, Troy. But, given the change in circumstances, I got to go from never going to happen to let's see how long the theaters are closed because our context has completely changed. So let's see what happens, man. All right. Next up, Kaiser Soze writes, "Hey, John, I was wondering, what is your favorite X-Men movie, Days of Future Past? I watched First Class again last night and was once again really surprised by how good the story and portrayals of a younger Charles and Eric are. Those two actors really fit the roles perfectly. Yeah, James and Michael were fantastic in that. They were great as Eric and Charles. I know a lot of people love X-Men First Class, and I like X-Men First Class. The problem is I only love half the movie. Like, I love that movie when it's focused on Charles and Eric. When X-Men First Class is focused on Charles and Eric, I'm loving the movie. When the focus is on the kids, I almost check out. I'm not a big fan of the movie when it's focusing on the kids. And that's like almost half the movie. So I like X-Men First Class. To me, it's a thumbs up. It's a winner of a movie, but I don't like it as much as most. I gotta say, X-Men Days of Future Past. If we're not gonna count Logan as an X-Men movie, if we're just talking about like a movie with the title X-Men in the title, then I'm gonna go Days of Future Past. To me, it's a top 10 comic book movie of all time. So I'm gonna say X-Men Days of Future Past. If we count everything, including Logan, then I would say Logan, but proper X-Men movies, Days of Future Past. All right, James Argento writes, prediction: one reason Falcon and Winter Soldier is delayed. Florence Pugh character from Black Widow or General Ross will appear in Falcon and Winter Soldier and mention something that happens in Black Widow, and that would be a spoiler. I don't think they would delay the release of a show for that. I really don't. I think if it's just a quick cameo thing and something gets mentioned, I think they edit that out and say, it was a good idea, but it's not absolutely necessary. I don't think you take your multi tens and tens and tens of maybe even $100 million property like that and say, well, it's got this little part in it. Can't do that. Let's delay the release by 6 months. Honestly, I think if that was the case, and I'm only speculating, I don't know. I'm just speculating. My speculation would be they would probably then just edit that out. I don't think you bump your release of that like 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, all for the sake of keeping in a scene where maybe a spoiler is dropped. I think you work around it. I think it's probably more likely that, number one, they just can't figure out how to get back to shooting it because they still have about 9 days of shooting to do, and they can't figure out how to get that done. Or it's just a matter of they just feel with the current market temperature, they just can't do it. Spoilers perhaps, but maybe it's more than just a spoiler. Maybe it's continuity-wise. They need this show to come out after Black Widow is out because it's not just some minor spoiler. There's actually a story thread. I mean, I don't know. It's all speculation. I think it probably has more to do with their ability to actually finish shooting the damn thing. Because Disney Plus needs original content on their air right now. But it's an interesting thought, James. All right, next up. Woodrow Wilkins writes, John, Rob, being a huge fan of the Michael Crawford Condor Man movie. Oh, that was bad. Do you ever see a reboot happening? Robert Pattinson was rumored to star a few years ago. Over or under, Rob has the Condor Man Blu-ray. I believe we've already talked about that, Woodrow. And by the way, since you tipped in $20, we're going to segment out this question and put it up in its own standalone video at some point in the next couple of weeks. Keep your eyes open for that. Do you ever see them doing a reboot of Condor Man? No. I mean, that move, that would, unless it was meant as a joke, like a cartoonist has his thing come to life, and what was the basic, he's trying to help like a Russian operative defect to the US. I mean, look, it was just so bad. It was just so awful. Plus, it's really, there's not even a lot of value to the IP anymore. Because, I mean, very, very few people even know what Condor Man is anymore. So it's not like you have a big nostalgia kick. It's not like Get Smart, where Get Smart was really widely known in its pop culture at the time. A lot of people remembered it fondly, so they went back and did another one because there's value in the IP. I don't know that there's any, I'm not saying there's absolutely not. I'm just saying I wonder if there's any value left even in the IP, even to do a release or a production based on a nostalgia basis. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but who knows? We'll keep our eyes open for the return of Condor Man, Woodrow. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, man. All right, Caleb Bain writes, also sends in a $20 tip. Thank you so much, Caleb. And again, if there was a question in here, we'll segment it out in the next couple weeks and put it up on the channel as its own standalone video. Hey, John, big fan. Thank you so much, man. Heard a rumor that Disney are looking to recruit Daft Punk to do the soundtrack to the next Tron sequel. What do you think they could do with the plot? I remember that they teased the return of the MCP at the end of the last one. Your thoughts? Okay, yeah, I wouldn't put any stock in that rumor at all. Now, the original rumor about Daft Punk coming back, it came from an interview with like the head of Disney Music, who said at some point he had had a conversation with Daft Punk about another Tron movie, but it was never actually framed in a context that we're talking about a new Tron movie that is happening and he wants to get them to do it. It was really more of a general conversation. It could have meant more, but really it was never clarified. It also doesn't really look like there's going to be another Tron movie, although there are people at Disney that are very passionate about Tron and that still lobby the upper offices to do another one. Right now, it doesn't look likely, but it's possible. Where could such a movie go, another Tron? Well, there were initial plans for doing, I believe it was called Ascendance. It was going to be called, I believe it was going to be called Tron Ascendance. And the basic idea was kind of like the Jurassic Park sequel. People from the grid invade the real world. I think that was the basic plot idea for Tron Ascendance. It was that all the characters in the grid emerge from the grid and somehow find a way to emerge from the grid and invade the world. So that was going to be, if I remember correctly, the idea of the next one. It stalled. They kind of thought about doing it. They kind of had a director on board, but then they decided, nah, let's not do it. So I don't know. That Jared Leto was said to be involved at some point. There were rumors about that. I don't know how substantiated those rumors were. So I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. Someday there will be another Tron movie. I don't know that I believe we'll get one in the next 5 years or so. We could. I wouldn't put money against it, but my thought right now, my guess right now is that we won't. I'll be a little bit surprised if we do, but and if they do, maybe they'll move ahead with that initial story idea. We'll have to find out. All right, next up, Jaron Morris writes. Is that right? Is that where we're at? Yes, we are. Jaron Morris writes, hey, John, happy Saturday. Thank you so much, man. Hope all is well. So since January, I've been learning to play guitar. Good on you, man. You know, I got my guitar right over there. I've been learning to play the guitar. Gotten pretty good to learned. I've gotten good enough to learn the Last of Us theme, which is beautiful, but because of Last of Us 2, I can't look at my guitar the same way for a while. Yep, there's a lot of emotion in Last of Us 2, Jaron, tied up into the symbolism of what the guitar represents to her in that game. Again, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but yet another beautiful thing about that game. Absolutely. Good on, keep on it. I love being involved in creative things, even if you're not the most creative person. I pick up my guitar, I'm not going to say every day, but like at least once or twice a week, I pick up my guitar, sit down, just play for a while. I'm thinking about buying myself a piano because I do play piano, but I haven't had a piano in like 12 years. So I've been thinking about getting a piano or a really good keyboard at some point, but that's just a good exercise. Whether you're somebody who draws or somebody who writes or whatever, it's just always good to keep one little foot involved in doing something creative. It's just good for the soul and good for your brain. All right, Jaron Morris also writes, John, without spoilers, was there a moment in Last of Us 2 you said to yourself or thought to yourself, yeah, maybe Ellie's going a little bit too far by what she's doing? For me, it was when she came across Mel and Owen. And yeah, that's definitely a powerful one. But that's the whole idea of Last of Us 2. That's the genius of Last of Us 2. The single greatest story execution in any video game movie or any video game ever. Greatest story from a pure narrative point of view ever done in video game history. There are those who don't like it, all due respect. That's fine. If you don't like it, that's great. But from my perspective, it's simply the best narrative ever in a video game. But the whole premise of the game is, what does pain and guilt, what can that do to a person? What can unspeakable pain and unbearable guilt drive a person to be or become, or do, even if it's completely contrary to their normal nature? And the world of The Last of Us is a violent, harsh, life and death decision kind of world that, unlike other stories, understands that there are repercussions to the violence and the things that happen. There are long-term repercussions. Last of Us 2 to me was a study of what happens not just to one character, but to several characters, of what are the long-term repercussions of your actions, and how, with a couple of characters, can unspeakable pain change you, even if it's apparently against your normal nature. To me, it was absolutely brilliant. So there are several moments in that game where I'm thinking, Ellie's going too far, but that's the point, right? And part of the reason why I thought it was so good. All right, anyway, Willow writes, Rob interpreted the scene of Superman spinning the Earth backwards as a visual metaphor for him flying back in time, and he didn't actually physically rotate the Earth. I personally still dislike the use of time travel. I feel like it's a cheat. Yeah, and look, we can have all of our interpretations. I've talked to Rob about this. We can all have our interpretations of it, but what happened in the movie is Spider-Man decided to fly around the Earth in the opposite direction of its rotation at super fast speeds that eventually changed the rotation of the Earth. And by changing the rotation of the Earth, time started going backwards. It was a rather ridiculous moment in an all-time classic movie. That being said, yes, again, I hate time travel in movies. It is a lazy man's plot device because there has never been a problem in any movie that can't be solved with time travel. And that one just kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, there's that, Willow. All right, Morse Codes writes, it wasn't Smith and Smith. Yes, somebody told me about this afterwards. It wasn't Smith and Smith, it was Simon Simon. I was talking about a TV show that I really liked back in that Airwolf, Knight Rider, A-Team era about the two brothers, and it's Simon and Simon. Smith and Smith was a Canadian comedy duo that had their own variety show, weekly variety show, sketch show on Canadian television. And one of the guys from Smith and Smith went on to become Red Green, for those of you who are familiar with Red Green. Anyway, you're right. It was Simon and Simon. Absolutely. And they did cross over with Magnum P.I. and Murder, She Wrote. Magnum and Fletcher had one SNS, Simon and Simon crossed over with Magnum, but not 100% sure the brothers and the writer also crossed over. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a great era for that kind of television. Like I said, that whole era. Simon and Simon, Magnum PI, A-Team, Knight Rider, Airwolf. I mean, just there was a good time it was a good, cheesy, fun time for TV, man. All right, thanks for pointing that out, Morse Codes. All right, James in Virginia writes, do you remember a show called Brotherly Love? No, I do not. Starring the Lawrence brothers. It aired in the early 90s and reran on Disney in the early 2000s. I don't hear much of it lately because it's only ran 2 seasons. Will we see it on Disney Plus soon? Stay safe. I have no recollection of any such thing. Let me look it up. Brotherly Love. Let's see what happens here. Joey Lawrence and Matthew Lawrence and Andrew Lawrence. You know, the poster looks somewhat familiar. I'll bring it up for those of you guys. I'm looking at it right now. The poster looks a little familiar, but no, I have no recollection of this show whatsoever. Where did it air originally? It reran on Disney, but I don't know if it's a Disney property or not. So I have no idea if we'll eventually see it on Disney Plus. I don't know if it's a Disney property, but I have no recollection. I remember Lawrence, but I have no recollection of that show, James, unfortunately. Sorry about that, man. All right. Next up, Darklock63 writes, one of two, Mr. Freeze. This is how I shall always remember you. Oh, and in that voice, this is how I shall always remember. Yeah, it's the dude who did the voice of Mr. Freeze in the Batman animated series was like one of the best animated voices ever. Anyway, this is how I shall always remember you, surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful. Rest well, my love. The monster who took you from me will soon learn that revenge is a dish best served cold. Batman animated series, Heart of Ice. Think of it, Batman, to never again walk on a summer's day with the hot wind in your face and a warm hand to hold. Oh yes, I'd kill for that. My favorite quotes from Batman animated series, Mr. Freeze, voiced by Michael and Sarah. And I'm not familiar with Michael's work other than that voice of Mr. Freeze in that original series was amazing. Somebody wrote in the other day asking me if I remembered a certain episode and named the episode. And I never remember the names of episodes of any show, even my favorite shows. I never remember the names of episodes, but I remember those moments. I remember that. By the way, I also got to say, I really like Mr. Freeze in the Harley Quinn show. Very different Mr. Freeze. A very different Mr. Freeze indeed, but I also love that Mr. Freeze. All right, thanks for sharing that, Dark Light. And those are 2 great moments from that series, absolutely. Drew H. writes, 1 of 2. Something I've always wondered. In The Last Jedi, Poe is demoted for defying orders when deciding to continue the attack on the Dreadnought. During that battle, the Dreadnought nearly destroyed the Raidus with its primary weapon, despite the distance in shields. Therefore, couldn't one argue that if Poe followed orders, they would have all been destroyed? The Dreadnought would have joined Snoke's ship in the pursuit, and its weapons would have been capable of destroying the fleet from the distance they were. Don't know. I mean, maybe, but you don't know. What did happen, and by the way, we're talking about a situation that is a theoretical, right? What did happen was the price tag of taking out that one ship, which didn't save them, taking out the Dreadnought ultimately didn't save them. The price tag of taking out that one ship was they lost all their bombers that they could have accumulated other victories with down the line, and he defied a direct order and blah, blah, blah. What you're talking about is a theoretical, what might have happened, what could have happened had that situation been different. So, yeah, I don't know. What you are dealing with was something tangible. They took out one ship, and they were still screwed, except now they were screwed without their bombers. And you had a guy leading the attack who directly defied the order to call it off. So, yeah, I mean, with a number of the issues that I have with The Last Jedi, and I like The Last Jedi. There are things about The Last Jedi I love, but there are also problems I have with The Last Jedi. But out of all the problems that I have with Last Jedi, that's not one of them. Because I think that the rationale for all that was kind of measured out. But anyway, that's just my one thought on that. But there are other issues we could talk about. There are definitely other issues we could talk about, Drew. Not a bad observation. All right, Jaron Morris writes, that traumatic nightmare hallucination that Ellie has in the barn gave me chills when she's got the kid. Gave me chills. Just hearing a beloved character screams got me. I mean, yeah, that's just yet another fabulous moment in that game. That was a good moment. Closer to the end, but a fabulous moment. Jaron Morris also writes, last one, I promise. The scene after the tragedy where Ellie goes to that person's house after the burial, and Ellie is just so broken and traumatized that she reaches for the door and she just shakes and cannot open it. That hit me hard. I don't know if I remember that one specifically. But it brings up a point though. There are so many moments in Last of Us 2 that you can overlook quickly. They're just these subtle, brief moments, whether it's a hand reaching for a door or looking at something on the ground or the way somebody hears a word and pauses because of that word. You know, it's not only this big narrative stuff, it's also these little things, these moments in it that I was just out. It's the kind of narrative storytelling I simply did not think was capable of being done in the video game medium. It's absolutely tremendous, and I'm with you on that 100%, Jaron. All right, next up. Henri Martens writes, John, am I crazy? I watched the first episode of The Wire, and I hated it. Well, listen, man, all stuff is subjective. It's all subjective. Just because a lot of people love it doesn't mean you're going to love it. So that's all perfectly fine, man. And hated unlikable characters, terrible pacing, and unrealistic dialogue, in my opinion. Fans of The Wire often mention that it takes the entire first season to get hooked. Should a show take that long to hook you? Listen, I'll tell you what. I went for the longest time without watching The Wire. And I heard the exact same stuff, that it takes like the full first season, maybe even the first season and a half, for the show to really get rolling. Should a show take that long to hook you? No. No, a show should not take that long to hook you. You know, you've got a job as a storyteller to hook in. Listen, when you're making a movie, you got to hook the audience, introduce the characters, set the narrative, then go through the body of the action, then bring it to conclusion and end the film, and you got to do it all in 2 hours. You got to do it all in 2 hours. That's why I've always said making film is way more difficult than making television. Because television, you got basically unlimited time. But if you can do that in a thing, there's no excuse why in the first hour, you can't get me on board with what your show's about. There's no excuse. But The Wire is one that absolutely takes, it didn't take me the entire first season to really get into it because I just heard for years it's the best show ever made. So I decided to try it out. I wasn't huge on it in the first episode. I'd say about halfway through the first season, or maybe a little bit towards the end of the first season, I started grooving with it. You know what I mean? And it becomes brilliant. It really does. But no, a show shouldn't take you that long. Like people, like when I watch a show for like 3 episodes and I ditch on it and people say, John, you got to give it a chance. No. I don't owe that show anything. I gave it 3 hours of my life. I gave that show 3 hours. And if that show couldn't get me in 3 hours, then that's their problem. Then that's their fault. I owe that show nothing. The Wire is an example of one that it pays off if you hang with it. One of my top 3 favorite shows of all time, Spartacus, I hated the first episode. I hated the first 2 episodes. I only kept watching it because Aaron Cummings was in it. So it wasn't until about episode 3 or 4 that I'm like, okay, this is starting to get pretty good. And then it became one of my top 3 favorite shows of all time. There are some examples for that, but should it take you that long to get into it? No. If I ditch on your show after the first few episodes because you failed to hook me, then that's your problem. That's not my problem as a viewer. That's your problem. If I choose to hang with it, then it's because I choose to. But I owe you nothing. So no, I don't believe it should take that long. But there are some examples where if you do, there is payoff. But it's rare. It's rare. Situations like The Wire are rare. Situations like Spartacus are rare. So, yeah, so I don't blame, listen, so Henri, I would just say I wouldn't blame you if you ditched The Wire right now. I am telling you it does get significantly better and becomes one of the most lauded, celebrated television shows of all time. But it means you got to get through some not so great stuff first. And so if you decide to not watch it, I can't blame you because it's the show's responsibility to get you hooked. It's not your responsibility to hang in there. It's the show's responsibility to hook you. So that's kind of my thought on that. All right, let's see. What's next here? Dave XP writes, a few weeks ago, I asked you how likely was the release of Chaos Walking, that's the Tom Holland, Daisy Ridley film, directly on streaming. You said about 15%. Do you think that is more likely now with this new mid-2021 theaters situation? Well, remember, we are not in a theaters opening in mid-2021 situation. That is one theoretical that's been floated by an analyst. But for the sake of conversation, let's go with that. Let's say movie theaters aren't going to open until mid-2021. I still don't believe that. I still believe we're going to get them open in the next couple of months. But then again, I thought they'd be open in time for Tenet to release on July 17th. And look how that turned out. But let's go with that for a second. Let's say, for argument's sake, that the movie theaters are not going to open till mid-2021. Chaos Walking, getting a theatrical release, got even more important because they went back and reshot and spent an ungodly amount of money in reshooting a lot of that movie. Because they finished shooting the movie and it was, in the words of the people that I know connected with the movie that have seen it, unwatchable. It was deemed to be unwatchable by everybody. Like, I even think the filmmakers thought this didn't work. And the studios were like, this is unwatchable. So they went back and had to spend a whole nother dump truck full of money to reshoot a whole ton of it. That puts them in a situation where it's even more important now that that film gets a theatrical release. But, like I was saying earlier, when information and context changes, you have to reevaluate some things. Yeah, I thought it was extremely unlikely that Chaos Walking would go to a straight to VOD thing. Extremely unlikely. If I said 15%, I'll take your word for it. I would have thought maybe I'd say 10%. But if the world has changed and we now live in a world where the movie theaters aren't going to open until like June of 2021, then that 15%, I would say, jumps to 40%. And the only reason I wouldn't say even a little bit higher is because they just spent even more money on it. So they've got to put it into a theatrical release to recoup that money. But I would say, even with that being the case, if we live in a world, and that's a big if we live in a world where movie theaters aren't going to open again till May or June of 2021, then I'd say that 15% jumps like significantly all the way up to 40, maybe even 45%. So we'll see, man. As context, new information changes, we got to reevaluate stuff. All right, Willem de Kid writes, in response to the Airwolf question you got, Major Dad was played by Gerald McRaney. I never really knew his name. Gerald McRaney, who also played Major Dad, who was first on the show Simon and Simon, which was developed as an 80s take on Butch and Sundance. Simon did do a crossover with Magnum PI once to help ratings. Yes, that's the guy. Because that guy, I never really saw the other guy. Like, this dude went on to be, he was Major Dad, and then if I'm not mistaken, I think he was even the bad guy in Westwood. I think he was even the bad. Was that Westwood that he was in? Hold on a second. Let me bring this up. Hold on a second. No. Oh, what's the name of that Western, guys? The Western that was on HBO. Was it Driftwood? Why am I freezing on the name of it? I can't remember the name of the show now. Something Wood, guys. Come on, help me out here. What was the name of that Western show on HBO? Something Wood. Why am I freezing on it? Why am I... not Driftwood. Not Westwood. I was thinking of Westworld. Deadwood. Thank you. Edelman and RJT. Deadwood. That was the name of it. If I'm not mistaken... Gerald was the bad guy in that, was he not? Hold on a second, let me see if I can find him. I thought he was like the big bad guy that showed up. Let me see if I can find this. Hold on a second, because now it's going to bother me unless I can. Mick. Let me see if I can find him. Okay, so there he is. Was he in Westwood? Oh, yeah, that's right. He was in This Is Us. He played the doctor in This Is Us. He did a bunch of stuff. Yes, he was in Deadwood. Okay. Okay, I remember correctly. Yeah, but you know what's funny? So while he did a lot of stuff, This Is Us, Deadwood, Major Dad, House of Cards. I forgot that he was in House of Cards. He popped up all over the place. I don't remember ever seeing the other guy. Let me look it up now. Who was the other? The other guy was Jameson Parker, who played AJ. Jameson Parker was in the JAG TV series 16 years ago, and that's about it. He really didn't do much. Gerald went on to do a lot. Jameson didn't do much. I just never really thought of the name. Interesting stuff. All right. Let's see here. Just Curious writes, "Hey, John, whatever happened to those amber-colored glasses you wore to prevent eye strain and headaches from your screens? Don't need them anymore?" Oh, I do. But here's the thing. I still have those amber ones. The problem is, so I am surrounded by 4 big monitors. All right. I'm surrounded by 4 large monitors. Now, what a lot of long-time video game players will tell you is that the light that comes off the monitors will cause eye fatigue, right? And I would find back in the day when I would do like Mailbag and stuff like that, I found that every time I did those shows, Movie Talk was different because I didn't have monitors in front of me. But when I would do like Mailbag, when I was sitting at my own computer like I am now and surrounded by 4 monitors, I really found that at the end of them, almost every time, not every time, but almost every time, I would find myself at the end of my show rubbing my eyes, and I would have headaches and blah, blah, blah. So somebody recommended to me this brand of glasses called Gunners, and they had this yellow tint on them. So I started wearing those, and I got to say, when I would wear them, I never got eye strain anymore. And I had some friends tell me, it's a placebo. I don't know, maybe, but I just know that when I wear these and do these shows in front of my monitors, I'm not rubbing my eyes at the end of the show. And I don't have a headache at the end of the show. So whatever, it works. But the problem with those glasses was that I looked like I was trying to be Bono from U2, right? Because they have these yellow glasses. Well, then somebody mentioned to me, guess what, John? They also make them with clear lenses now. You can get them with clear lenses. And I was like, oh, really? Because guess what, guys? I don't wear glasses. I don't wear glasses. I simply wear these because I find when I'm wearing these, by the end of the show, I don't have eye strain. And I don't have headaches when I finish my show when I'm wearing these. So that's why every once in a while you'll see me do them, because sometimes I'll just start my show and I wouldn't have put them on. That's fine. And it doesn't always affect me, but for the most part, I just put them on, and I find by the end of the show, I feel fine. So the glasses are still here. They just turned from yellow to clear. So there's that. Anyway, I recommend them too. Again, the brand name that I like is called Gunnar, Gunnar. At Gunnar, I believe is the spelling of it. Let me just double check that here. Gunnar glasses. Let me see if that's it. Yes, that's it. Actually, I'll bring it up here. For those of you guys who are curious, this is the brand that I like to use. Totally, we're off on a different topic now for sure. But for those of you curious and are interested, that's what I use. So, all right. I hope that answers your question. Just curious. All right. Next up, Dave XP writes, Netflix Nordic's YouTube channel put up a 10-hour version of Yaya Ding Dong from the Eurovision movie, and it's just delightful. That is such a feel-good movie. Listen, that was a movie that I enjoyed far more than I should have. Eurovision was a movie that honestly did not have my attention at all. I wasn't interested in Eurovision at all. I thought the trailers didn't do anything to get me excited about it. This is going to be a bad Will Ferrell movie, blah, blah, blah. And then I watched it and I'm like, you know what? This is pretty charming. I actually ended up kind of liking Eurovision, and some of the songs are fantastic. But yeah, everybody who watches that comes out talking about Yaya Ding Dong. Get in here and play Yaya Ding Dong. Anyway, if you don't know what it is, go look it up, because I'm going to have to look up that 10-hour version of it, Dave. I'm going to have to go and see if I can find that. All right, next up, Julius A. Goodwin writes, So you'd wait for other people to test the COVID vaccine before you used it. Yes. On one of your thoughts on walks, did you not call the 11 apostles cowards who stayed on the boat when Jesus walked on water and only Peter tried it? Sir, I'm so disappointed. Okay, well, yeah. So what Julius is talking about is on one of my thoughts on walks, which I hope I can do again soon. On one of my thoughts on walks, I talked about this story. And whether you are a believer in Christianity, faith, whatever, even just take it as a parable if you wish. But I talk about how in life you need to take risks sometimes. Take calculated risks, think things through, but at some point, even with all your calculations, thinking things through, there comes a point where you got to take a leap of faith and take a risk. And what I was talking about is like with me, you know, when I was contemplating leaving Collider, and a regular paycheck job and all that kind of stuff to jump off and do it on my own, where I didn't know if I was going to be able to earn a living. I didn't know if I was going to succeed. I mean, it might be destroying my career or whatever, you know, and I thought it out. I planned it out. I looked at it rationally. And then after I gave it a lot of thought, I understood there was still risk and I decided to take a risk. It was the same thing when I decided to leave AMC. It was the same thing when I decided to leave my job at a law firm to do movie blogging full time. There come points in your life where you need to take a risk. But I also always said, part of that, you need to think them out and take calculated risks. Don't take blind risks. Like, don't take all the money out of your savings account, go to Las Vegas and put it all on red. That's not a well thought out nor a well calculated risk. That's just blind, nonsense. That's just blind nonsense. In the parable, though, in the story in the Bible, whether you take it as literal parable, it's irrelevant for the meaning of the story. In that story, though, about Peter walking on water, remember, he is a dude, like Jesus to him at that moment wasn't some stranger. He knew him. He knew him. It was still a risk getting out of the boat and trying to walk on water like Peter did, but it was a calculated risk. It wasn't a blind leap of faith. It wasn't some blind leap of faith. He knew him. And so in the story, when Jesus says, hey guys, come out and walk on water with me, 11 of the apostles stayed cowering in a boat. Only one guy, Peter, got out of the boat and actually took a couple of steps on water. But again, it was a calculated risk. He knew him. So somebody asked me the other day on the show, if they come out with a vaccine for COVID-19, will you take it immediately or will you wait a bit? And I said, well, I'll probably wait a week or two because I don't want to be a test subject. And plus, it's not something I have any availability to take a calculated risk on. Whenever you take vaccines, I mean, there are vaccines that are long-term that there's no risk. You know what they do, blah, blah, blah. There's 20 years of medical study to show what it does. But some brand new vaccine that they're kind of rushing and throwing together, I still trust them, but I'm also going to take a calculated risk. I was saying, okay, I'll wait a week or two. There are going to be a lot of people that want to rush to try it first, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Me, I'll probably wait a week or two just to make sure everything's cool, and then I'll take that own calculated risk myself. But yes, taking risks in life is about taking calculated risks. And at some point, no matter how much thinking or planning you do, there is still going to be risk involved. There's always going to be the possibility of failure. And I do believe you have to hit that wall and then make that choice to take a risk. But don't do it blindly. Don't do it without thinking about it. Don't do it without using your own rational thought. Just like Peter did, because he knew the guy he was walking to. So anyway, that's that story, Julius. All right, anyway, Dave Atkins writes, I've been playing Ghosts of, I've never known how to pronounce this. I've just read it a ton of times. Tsushima, which looks absolutely gorgeous, by the way. Since midnight last night, some funky animations aside, I'm really digging it. Audiovisual presentation is second to none. Amazing attention to detail with the option of Japanese or English audio, which is cool. Oh, that's actually kind of neat, where it gives you the option. That's great. That game looks gorgeous. That game looks gorgeous. I'll never play it. I'll never play it. I can already just tell it's because I am terrible using console game controllers. I'm terrible at them. I can only play the most basic of games on consoles with console controllers. I am a keyboard and mouse guy. I mean, I do play some stuff on my PS4, and I'll play some stuff on the Nintendo Switch because that's very basic controller stuff. But I can already tell that new game, well, it looks jaw-droppingly gorgeous. I just know I would play it for 30 seconds and then whip my controller against a wall until it explodes into 1,000 pieces. I just know that about myself. So I'll probably never play it. Unfortunately. So I'll just have to marvel at its at how good it looks and hear from other people how good the game is. But I'll probably never play it. All right, Philip writes, me and my sister watched the Scoob movie, and I actually really liked it. She didn't like it only because that it didn't have the same voice actors from before. I think it's kind of silly not to like a movie just because of the voice actors. What about you? Oh, I agree, but I bet if I talked to your sister and I asked her, did you love this movie except for the fact that it was the voice actors? I'm betting money she would probably tell me several other reasons she didn't like it. If the only reason she didn't like it, like everything about the movie was good, and the only reason she didn't like it was because it wasn't the original people doing the voices, well, then I think you're robbing yourself. But listen, all film is subjective. And you have every right for a movie to work for you or not work for you by whichever reasons you choose. As a matter of fact, you don't even choose it, right? You don't put food in your mouth and decide if you like it. You put food in your mouth and you discover if you like it or not. Same it is with movies, I believe. I don't believe you watch a movie and choose to like it. You watch a movie and you discover if you like it. It's not really a choice. A comedian tells you a joke. You can't choose whether or not you authentically laugh. You can choose to fake it if you want, but you can't choose whether you authentically have a reaction to the joke that you laugh. You discover if the joke makes you laugh. And if for her, the differing voices threw her off so much, well, then that's what it is for her. Then that's what it is for her. But again, I'm willing to put money, Sam, that I bet if I sat down with your sister and said, did you love everything about that movie except for the fact that the voices were different? I'm willing to bet money right now. I don't know your sister, but I'm almost willing to bet money that she would say, no, there are other things I didn't like about the movie too, but who knows? But again, it's like, listen, we all like and dislike different movies for our own reasons at different times because we just never know how it's going to hit us. All right, next up, Dave Atkins writes, been curious about Mrs. McFilthy's Anne's taste in video games. From her Animal Crossing antics, she seems to be into Nintendo, but in terms of genres and consoles PC, does she have an all-time favorites? Thanks, Joe. Keep safe during these weird times. She's totally a Nintendo person. Like the games she has played, first of all, she hasn't put down, she literally plays Animal Crossing every day. Every day. She plays Animal Crossing and has for months now. Before that, she would play Luigi's Haunted Mansion 3. Is that the name of the latest one? Luigi's Haunted Mansion 3? Anyway, I never played it, but she would play that every day. Every day. Before that, then it's mobile. Pokemon Go. Oh my God, I couldn't go anywhere. I'm not going to lie to you. This is one of the stressful parts of our marriage. All marriages have their issues. It would bother the hell out of me that no matter where we would go, she would pull out her damn phone and be playing Pokemon Go wherever we went. Like we'd go down to Universal City Walk at Universal Studios and walking around Universal City Walk. And I'm like taking in the sights and sounds and the people. And I'd look back at my wife who I'm spending time with and she's got her nose buried in her phone playing Pokemon Go. Screw you, Pikachu, for stressing out my marriage. Anyway. But yeah, that's her go-to stuff. She's played a few things on the PS4 and whatever, but she's mostly her Nintendo Switch and mobile games. That's really where she is. And for the last couple of months, it's been all Animal Crossing. Like all Animal Crossing, all day, every day. All right, next up. Luis Cortez writes, what do you think about Kit Harington? He's one of the reasons why Jon Snow was my favorite character, and he was on a show called Gunpowder with Liv Tyler, where I thought he was great. Looking forward to Eternals, and hopefully he appears in more MCU movies. For me, honestly, the jury on Kit Harington is still out. Let me bring up his thing. I remember I watched him in this comedy he did with Adam Sandler, where he was like a tennis player. That was kind of cute. Then he did that one, the one about the volcano. What was it called again? Pompeii. He did Pompeii. That he did, I think Sean Bean was in that. Let me bring this up here for a second. I think Sean Bean was in that. Oh, no, it wasn't Sean Bean. It was Kiefer Sutherland. It was Kiefer Sutherland that was in that with him. Not only was Pompeii not all that good, let me bring it up here. Not only was Pompeii really not that good, I gotta say, he was not very good in it. He was not all that good in it. I liked him in Game of Thrones. So, and I was in the middle of the road with him on that tennis comedy. What is the name of that damn tennis comedy that he did? Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it here. And it was on HBO, I think it was called. Was it 7 Days in Hell? Yes, it was 7 Days in Hell. So let me see if I can bring this up here. It was 7 Days in Hell where they play these. It's supposed to be kind of like a McEnroe-Borg rivalry thing, where they play these two rival tennis players. And I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was an HBO thing. Overall, it was kind of funny. I didn't know how much I liked Harrington in it, though. So, but again, I like him very much in Game of Thrones. But I think right now the jury's out. I know we've got him coming up in Eternals. And he's going to have a few other things coming out too, now that Game of Thrones is done. He's certainly in a good position to do some stuff. He hasn't done or shot anything other than Eternals since Game of Thrones ended. He's done nothing. He has nothing else on his IMDb, even as upcoming, other than Eternals. I think Eternals could be incredibly pivotal for his career. If he doesn't do well in Eternals, I think he'll just always be looked at as the Game of Thrones guy. If he can do well in Eternals, it, compounded with his success on Game of Thrones, it could open up a lot of doors for him. For me, I am in the middle of the road on Kit Harington. I think the jury's still out. I'm still watching his career with great interest. To quote the Emperor, I watch your career with great interest. But right now, there's a little bit of good, there's a little bit of not so good. So I'm curious to see how it all turns out. I hope it works out well for him, though. I really do. I hope it works out great for him. All right, next up. Corey Marshall writes, "Hey, John, saw some film-related books brought up the other day. Yeah, we were talking about how Star Wars Conquered the Universe. We were talking about Slugfest, which is amazing. And I thought I'd throw in a recommendation. Caddyshack, The Making of a Hollywood Cinderella Story by Chris Nashawati is a fantastic book, equal parts hilarious and heartbreaking. I've never heard of that. Let me, hold on a second. Let me bring this up here. What's it called again? Let's see. Caddyshack, The Making. Look at that. It pops right up in my Google search. Caddyshack, The Making. I'll bring this up here so you guys can see it. The Making of a Hollywood Cinderella Story. No customer reviews, so I don't know if a lot of people have bought it. It's a perfect book cover. Caddyshack is like an all-time classic, so you got me interested. I might check that one out. Thank you for putting that on my radar, Corey. I appreciate that, man. All right, next up. John, he says, the question... Where did I lose him? There he is. Trent writes, "Hey, John, sports question. I know Canada is the best in the world at hockey producing amazing talent. We are. But what is your opinion on American hockey? Does the U.S. produce good talent? Is there great American hockey players currently in the NHL? Thank you." Well, yeah, listen, obviously Canada followed by Russia have produced the greatest hockey players, obviously mostly Canada, but Russia has also produced some of the great hockey talent of all time. But a lot of people forget there's been some very, very good American hockey talent. As a matter of fact, right now, Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, yes, he's playing on a Canadian team, but Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs is an American-born player. And he's one of the better players he's not the best player in the NHL, but he's one of the better players in the NHL. And one of the great hopes of Toronto Maple Leaf history to maybe actually start becoming relevant again. And that's a team that is being led by an American-born player right now. And it's not only that, when you go through there's some of the big names in NHL history have been American-born players, the best of which is probably Chris Chelios. But you got Chris Chelios, Patrick Kane, You got LaFontaine. You got Madonna. Madonna is like one of the great ones. Even just recent memories. Would the LA Kings have won Stanley Cups without Quick? Without Jonathan Quick? American-born goalie, by the way? I don't think so. I mean, so yeah. And then, well, Brett Hull, he sometimes played on Team USA. He's Canadian. Born the son of a Canadian. He was born in Canada. He's Canadian, so you can't really count Hull on that list. The Golden Brett. You can't count him on that list. But yeah, a lot of big, high-profile, all-time great names have been American. Like I said, today, God's team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, are being led by an American-born player in Austin Matthews. So yeah, there is some really good American talent, man. All right, let's see here. Preston Bell writes, one of two. Okay, John. I will admit that I am among the few I know that loves Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. Hey, man, I really like the movie. The growing hatred between Bruce and Clark is done well with just the right amount of darkness, especially the beginning where Bruce finds that girl. He finds at the beginning of the movie in the wreckage, looking for her dad, as well as the damage being done through the eyes of CEOs and civilians. It gives a good reason why to hate Superman. Also, the Doomsday scene at the end, oh man, so good. Listen, I'll tell you what, I am a defender of Batman versus Superman. I even put out a video once called Defending the Martha Scene. Whereas I just think people, and it's the filmmaker's fault, it's Zack Snyder's fault, but I think people misunderstand the Martha scene. And I think people misunderstand the Martha scene because Zack Snyder admittedly did a bad job portraying it, and that's why the scene's become a joke. Why did you say that name? It's become a joke, but I actually defend that scene because I think I see what Zack Snyder was actually trying to communicate in that scene. So anyway, I did a video called Defending the Martha Scene, if you want to go look that up sometime. Listen, I think the beginning of X-Men 2, where Nightcrawler attacks the White House, is amazing. X-Men 1 and 2 have two of the greatest opening scenes of all time, but X-Men 1 takes the cake. There has never been in a comic book movie a better opening than that opening of X-Men 1 in the year 2000, where a young Eric Leshner is being dragged away in a German concentration camp where he's being separated from his family. It is the greatest opening to any comic book movie ever. That said, the opening to Batman vs. Superman as a flashback, and I love the way the subtitle says it when it comes up on screen, the day the world saw the Superman, right? And it flashes back to the events of Man of Steel when he's having his battle with the Kryptonians in the city. But now it's being told from the perspective of Bruce Wayne. And it ends with him finding the little girl and saying, little girl, where's your mom? And her pointing to a pile of rubble and the pain in his face. And then, I swear to God, some of the best acting in any comic book movie anywhere, and there's no dialogue. He's holding the girl, realizing this little girl's parents have just died. His friends, he just listened to his friend die on the phone, and then he looks to the skies. I can't do it the way Ben Affleck did it, but... And the look of righteous rage. Righteous, quiet rage. Even though he didn't have on the cowl, you're like, that's Batman looking up in the sky right there. And he couldn't hide it. He's wearing his Bruce Wayne mask, but even though he's wearing his Bruce Wayne mask, he couldn't hide it. That intense, righteous anger. And he put all the blame there for the pain and the destruction around him and the pain of this little girl, and he wasn't going to have it. It is, other than that opening X-Men scene in the German concentration camps, which that will never be equaled. That will never be equaled. That's one of the best openings to a comic book movie. Think what you will about Batman versus Superman. Maybe you love the movie, maybe you hate it. But even if you hate it, you got to admit that opening is so damn good. It's such a great opening. And overall, I really look. The movie makes a lot of mistakes, sure, but I think overall, I think Batman versus Superman is really good. I enjoy Batman versus Superman very much. And that opening, dude. That opening is just so great. Okay, anyway, next up. Chris Warden writes, How did you score the Max Holloway Volkanovski fight? I had it rounds 1 and 2 for Holloway, round 5 for Volkanovski, and rounds 2 and 3 were toss-ups that could have gone either way. In my opinion, that makes it a super close fight, and I don't think you can call it a robbery. Yeah, it was a title fight this past Saturday. It was former champion versus current champion, and it went 5 rounds and went to a decision. And a lot of people thought Holloway won the fight, and the decision went to Volkanovski. Now, they also had a pretty close fight the last time they fought when Volkanovski beat Holloway to take the title from him. Some people say they thought Holloway won that fight. I'm sorry. There is no way Max Holloway won that first fight. I don't know what universe you're living in. I simply do not know what universe you're living. Like, I love Chael Sonnen. I do. But I listen to Chael Sonnen and go, I actually think Holloway won that first fight. I'm like, what planet are you living on? Volkanovski clearly convincingly won that fight. I know it went all 5 rounds. I know it was a good fight, but Volkanovski clearly won that fight. But this second fight that happened last Saturday, when Holloway tried to get his title back from Volkanovski, oh, I can't blame you at all if you thought Holloway won that fight. I can't blame you at all. I think you're special kind of crazy if you think Holloway won the first fight. He did not. But I cannot blame you a bit if you thought he won the second one. Now listen, I personally, when the fight ended, I said, all right, I give it by the razor thinnest of margins, 3 rounds to 2 for Volkanovski. I give it by the razor's thin margins to him. But I kind of think the judges are going to go for Holloway here, and I can't blame them because that was so close, and Max Holloway looked so good in that fight. I was expecting to hear Bruce Buffer say, and your winner by split decision and new champion Max Holloway. I really expected to hear that. So I was a little bit surprised that it went to Volkanovski, but again, I scored it 3-2 Volkanovski. But by the razor's thin margins, and I have no complaints and no arguments to make with anybody who thinks Holloway won that fight. I can't argue it. I mean, it was super tight. It was super close. I could easily have seen some the judges giving that fight to Holloway. So, unlike the first fight, which clearly Volkanovski won, this one, there's an argument to be made. But as of right now, Volkanovski is 2-0 against Max Holloway. Anyway, Chris Warden writes, also, with theaters not likely opening up anytime soon, do you think Bill and Ted 3 will get pushed, or will they just release it on VOD? Considering it's not some big budget blockbuster that needs to make $400 million to break even, VOD could be a possibility. I'll tell you what, Bill and Ted 3 is an absolute candidate for being moved to VOD for a couple of reasons. Number one, like you said, it's not some huge blockbuster movie that absolutely needs theatrical release money, right? I mean, they'd make more money if they released in theaters than they do on VOD, but it's not as perilous, right? So there's that. The second is this. Much like Artemis Fowl, I think they know, look, despite all the buzz in our movie-loving circles, I am telling you right now, Bill and Ted 3 is not going to, even if it opened in theaters on time and there was no pandemic, I have said from day one, I don't think Bill and Ted 3 is actually going to make that much money. It might be great, but I just think those of us in these movie-loving circles, I think we're ignoring the fact that most movie-going audiences really don't care. I really don't think Bill and Ted 3 was going to make much. And that, I believe, makes it a prime candidate, saying, look, it wasn't going to make much in theaters anyway. It didn't cost us that much to make. So I think if there's any movie out there that is ripe to be put as a straight to VOD, I think that's one of them. I'll give it a 60% chance that we hear in the next month or two that Bill and Ted 3 is going to be shifting to streaming. Where streaming, how streaming, I'm not sure. But I give it a 60% chance, Chris. All right. Preston Bell writes, also, on the actual fight scenes in Batman vs. Superman, there isn't actually a definitive winner. Oh, yes, there is. There is absolutely a definitive winner in that fight. Didn't Lex say fight to the death? Or Lex doesn't set the rules about who wins the fight or who doesn't win the fight. I know Batman had Superman pinned, but he softened and threw the kryptonite spear away. Nobody died, so nobody won. Oh, no. Sorry. All film is subjective, but you are objectively wrong in that fight. Batman won. He won the fight. He just chose not to kill him. I mean, it's just that simple. Batman won the fight. But he chose, having defeated Superman, he chose to spare his life and chose not to kill him. Making the choice to not kill him doesn't mean, oh, well, the fight was a draw. No. Batman won that fight in that movie. Now, I was going to be fine going into Batman versus Superman. And I'll be honest with you, I was shocked that Zack Snyder didn't have it do what they often do when heroes fight other heroes, make it a draw. Right? I thought for sure they'd do the stereotypical thing and make it a draw. And I remember going into Batman versus Superman and thinking, look, I kind of hope Batman wins because, Batman, but I don't mind if Superman wins the fight, which maybe he should win the fight. I don't mind if Batman wins the fight. I just want one of them to win. If you're going to call your movie Batman versus Superman, then when Batman and Superman fight, I want a clear winner. Don't punk out and go, oh, it's a draw, right? Kind of like in the first Avengers movie when, you've got Thor and Iron Man and Cap all fighting each other in the forest, right? It ends in a pure draw. It ends in a draw. I really thought that's what they're going to do, but Zack Snyder said, no, we're calling this movie Batman versus Superman. One of them's going to win. Batman won. Now, maybe he loses 9 out of 10 further battles with Superman. But the important thing was there was a definitive winner. And in this one particular case, Batman was the definitive winner. And just because he chose, after achieving victory, not to drive a kryptonite spike through his heart, that doesn't change the fact that he won the fight. So he did clearly win that fight, Preston, my brother. All right, Bobcat Goldwaith writes, just wondering, can you see the real names and email addresses of donators? Yes. I.e. PayPal info logged after we donate. I believe I can. Yes. I've never looked at it closely, but I believe I can. Also, gonna head to the mall to see if the stores have any sales. I'm sure they're hurting for customers right now. Then starting Doom Patrol. Enjoy Doom Patrol, my friend. And of course, hey, listen, go to the malls, but be smart, be safe. If you get to the mall and it's crowded, avoid it. If you see a bunch of idiots walking around without masks, avoid it. Ann and I went to a place to eat the other day, but they had like 70% of their tables closed down. They took your temperature when you came in, made you apply hand sanitizer when you came in, and made sure you're wearing a mask when you weren't at your table. And then when we got seated at a table, there was nobody else around us for I know it's 6 feet minimum distance. There wasn't anybody around us for 15 feet in every direction. It was great. They only had 20% of their tables, 25% of their tables open. Most of their tables were shut down. It was great. Look, so you can go out in public. Just be smart. Ann and I, when we were in San Diego, we got a little quiet place for ourselves to enjoy looking at the water and whatever. And we went out and walked around downtown. But as we started walking downtown, we saw, man, there are hordes of people down there. We decided to turn down another street. We said, you know what? We're not going to go in there and rubbing shoulder to shoulder with people. So we went down another street and kind of took the long way around and went back to the shore and all that kind of stuff. Go out, just be smart. Be safe, take care of yourself, and take care of the people around you. Just do the smart things. And I hope you enjoy Doom Patrol, man, because I freaking love that game, or that show so much. I hope you do too. All right, John Campea's Cup writes, John, you made it, and you're the best at what you do in terms of quality and all-around information. Oh, thank you so much, man. And that's why thousands tune in every day to soak up like a sponge. We as fans appreciate you being here for us. One thought, though, replace the green cup. Oh, no, my green cup. Here's why I use this cup. I'll tell you why I use this cup. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at it on the screen, but I've got, by the way, I don't have one cup. I've got 8 of these that look exactly the same. I've got 8 of them. So it's not the same cup I'm using every day. The reason I use this cup is because unlike a lot of my chalices and glasses and mugs, I don't know if you can tell from this, from just looking at it like this. This is a very large cup. It's actually quite large. And I have these ice cubes. I have an ice cube maker that makes ice cubes like this big. and this square. Like they're giant. They're huge ice cubes. They're like the size of this thing. They're massive. I love these ice cubes because they last forever. I've been doing this show for an hour and a half. Guess what? My ice cube in here, can you see it? My ice cube in there is still more than half full. Look at it. You see it back in there? Look at how big that ice cube is. And it's been sitting here for an hour and a half. That's why I love these huge ice cubes. They stay in there and they stay cold longer. Anyway, back to the cup. The reason I use this cup is because I don't have, or have very, very few other cups that I can pour a full can of Zevia into it and put this giant ice cube in without it overflowing the cup. This is one of my, see, there's method to my madness. This cup is big enough that I can pour in an entire can of Zevia. It comes to about here. And then when I put in the giant ice cube, then it comes up to about here. But it holds it. I still have that much to spare, comfortable. All my other glasses, when I put that with the giant ice cube in, it makes it overflow. Or come very, very close to overflowing. So that's why I use this very cheap bargain basement, Target green cup. That's why I use it. Method to my madness, man. Method to my madness. All right, Mike the Man writes, "Hey, John, I'm a big fan of Robert Zemeckis. We've been talking about him a lot recently as a director, but his last few films have been duds, true. With Welcome to Marwen bombing badly and The Walk being a box office loss. What do you think is next for him? I hope to see him make a comeback. Your thoughts?" Yeah, listen, it kind of speaks to the whole thing. Let me bring something up here. Let's see if I can get this. All right. I believe we were just talking about a movie he was going to be looking at doing here. Hold a second. He's also producing a lot. Let's not forget that. Oh, that's right. It's The Witches. Everybody's talking about him doing The Witches. I believe with Anne Hathaway is connected to that. Let me bring that up. Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, Stanley Tucci, Chris Rock. I mean, that's a pretty good lineup of talent right there. So he's directing a remake of The Witches that's supposed to come out in October of 2020. Obviously, that seems highly unlikely at the moment. Of course, he directed the Academy Award-winning film Forrest Gump, Contact. Was he just the writer? Did he direct? I can't remember if he directed Back to the Future or if he just wrote it. Hold on a second. Let me just double check this. No, he directed as well. So he wrote and directed Back to the Future. Last drip of my drink there. But listen, the tale of Robert Zemeckis, who is clearly a great filmmaker. And the fact that he's made some bad movies recently, I was very disappointed in Welcome to Marwen because it's Steve Carell and Robert Zemeckis. I was super excited for it. I thought it fell a little flat. Allied wasn't that bad. I didn't think Allied was that bad. The Walk was pretty good that he did with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. That was not bad. Not great, but not bad. But he's not had a lot of big successes. I actually personally like his Beowulf that he did in 2007. The animated one, I kind of like that one too. But listen, Robert Zemeckis is a great reminder of just how hard it is to make good movies. It's hard. People see some good movies, they say, making a good movie is easy. No. Even guys who are great at it, like Robert Zemeckis, are going to have bad days at the office, and he's one of the best. So it's a stark reminder for that. Here's hoping that his next film, Witches, turns out pretty good. He's also got a couple of others. He's got a film he's developing right now called The King. Right now, there's nobody attached to it. It's a legendary king who was the first to unite the warring Hawaiian Islands. That sounds pretty cool. So maybe there's that. He's got another one coming out, I believe, a Pinocchio movie, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, let me see if let me bring that up. Yes, he's apparently doing a Pinocchio movie, a live adaptation of Pinocchio. But I'm nobody attached to it right now. But right now, the film that's on everybody's radar is The Witches. So let's see how that one turns out. All right. Let's see. Next one up. Dan Ketchum writes, given how long it takes to get test results back, aren't productions, say The Flash, going to have to shut down the moment anyone tests positive? If Gustin gets it, it's not like they can go on without him. But all of them will have to isolate anyway. Well, listen, again, they need to go through the procedure, because they can get results now faster than they could before. They need to go through the type of procedure that Universal is doing with Jurassic World Dominion right now, and that the UFC is doing. The UFC is showing you can do it and do it right because they've had nobody catch COVID from being at their events. So what they do is, what the UFC is doing is that they tell everybody to self-isolate for a couple of weeks. Once they self-isolate, they have them go to one location, location 1, and they isolate there again at location 1 and they get tested. Then, once they've isolated and are tested at location 1, once they come back clean, they are cleared to go to location 2, which is where they actually do the shooting. So that's what the UFC's been doing. So they had everybody self-isolate for a week or two. Then they flew to Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, they quarantined and they got all their testing done in Las Vegas. Then once they showed clean in Las Vegas, they put them on a plane and flew them to Abu Dhabi and to Fight Island. So you knew that everybody here has been through that process and everybody here is tested clean. And a couple of times they caught people having COVID-19 in the earlier stage. So they isolated them, sent them away, test everybody else clean, fly them in. They're going to have to find some kind of procedure like that. Okay, guys, hey, listen, we start shooting Flash again in a month. We're asking all of our actors, please self-isolate for 2 weeks before coming to Los Angeles or wherever they're going to shoot. Please self-isolate for 2 weeks. Then we're going to fly you to a hotel we're booking for a couple of days. You're going to stay in that hotel for a couple of days, and we're going to run tests on everybody. And then once everybody clears those tests, we'll take you to Vancouver, to our closed set in Vancouver. They're just going to have to go through it that way. And yeah, obviously, if Grant Gustin comes down with it and he's out, you can't start shooting. He's the star of the show. But they're going to have to come up with some kind of system like that because it's working for the UFC. And it's what the NBA is trying to do right now, too. They bring everybody to Orlando, put them in the bubble. They're testing everybody, kicking people out, all that kind of stuff. They're just going to have to come up with some kind of system like that. All right, Julius A. Goodwin writes. Julius A. Goodwin writes, so let me get this right. Knowing this is a terrible movie, you watch it again. Seriously, there are a few hours of life wasted that you can't exactly ask for a refund. Well, I mean, that's true. But again, I really thought, considering it's one of the most notoriously, we're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, knowing it's one of the most notoriously bad movies ever, but it's based on a celebrated property that I had not seen when I watched the movie. And the fact that we were in the 10th anniversary of it, and that it kind of came up again the other day, yeah, I thought, you know what? It might behoove me, now that I have seen the animated show on which it's based, it might behoove me to watch a bit of this and to kind of see how my reaction to it may or may not differ now that it's 10 years later and now I have seen the animated show. And I had a little, I still thought the movie was wretchedly awful, yes, but I also gained some different perspectives from it now that I've seen the show. So I thought it was a worthwhile exercise. I do. I thought it was a worthwhile exercise. Preston Bell writes, where are we at here? Happy 12th birthday to my favorite comic book, The Dark Knight. That can't be right. The Dark Knight is not only 12 years. Oh, wait a second. Oh, comic book movie. I thought, are you talking about The Dark Knight Returns? That's a lot older than 12 years old. The Dark Knight, is it 12 years old now? Hold on, let me pull this up. The Dark Knight, is it 12? 2008. When did it release? July. You're right. Today is the 12th anniversary. Man, it just feels like yesterday that we were talking about it celebrating its 10th anniversary. Holy crap, 2 years has flown by fast. Holy crap, 2 years has flown by fast. It just feels like a few months ago we were talking about the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight. And here we are today at the 12th anniversary. Oh my God. All right. Thanks for pointing that out, Preston. All right. And you're not alone. To a lot of people, that's a lot of people's all-time favorite comic book movie. All right. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, I wanted to ask you, which trilogy do you think is better and which do you prefer watching? The Wolverine trilogy or the Matrix trilogy? I lean more towards the Wolverine trilogy. I like the Wolverine more than the Matrix Reloaded. I don't consider the Wolverine one a trilogy because they're each done in a completely different reality with no continuity, really. So it's funny because Rob and I were just talking about this the other day. I don't consider, X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then I think it's called The Wolverine, and then Logan. I don't consider those a trilogy. I consider those three very separate, standalone, isolated, not really even in the same continuity movies that just so happen to have the same lead character. Now, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong if you consider them a trilogy. Rob himself actually considers them a trilogy. I think a lot of people do consider it a trilogy. I just don't. So let's just say, which of the following sets of three films do I think is better? The Wolverine one or the Matrix one? I'm going to lean towards the Matrix. But the best movie out of all six is one of the Logan. It's Logan. Logan is the best movie out of all six of the films. John, did you just say you thought Logan was better than Matrix? I do. I love the Matrix. I adore the first Matrix. It's an all-time classic. But yes, I think the first Logan, I personally think it's a better movie than the original Matrix. But I like Matrix 2 a lot more than most people do. It's not as good as the first Matrix, but a lot of people look at Reloaded and they do not like Reloaded. I do. Pardon me. I like Reloaded. They had a lot of good stuff in there, like between the twins and everything else. I really like The Matrix Reloaded, not nearly as much as the first one. And yeah, I didn't like the third one like everybody else. There's neither of the other two Wolverine films do I like. So I got The Matrix, which I almost like as much as Logan. And then I got the second Matrix film, which I also think is really good. And I can't say that about the other Logan films. So while Logan, I think, is the best movie out of the six, I'm going to say that as a better set of three movies, I'm going to go with Matrix. But ask me again in a year and I might give you a different answer. But that's kind of how I think about it right now. Good question, Ben. All right, Stubble McShave writes, which big movie do you think they could release in theaters abroad and on VOD in the US? I think Black Widow is the likeliest candidate since it's possibly holding up a few Marvel TV shows and will probably make the least of the big movies, except possibly Mulan. I don't know, man. Listen, it's a Marvel movie. Not only is it a Marvel movie, it's going to be the first Marvel movie we get in a long time. I can't remember the last time we went this long in between Marvel films. By the time we get to Black Widow, I can't remember the last time we went this long in between Marvel films. It is an MCU movie that averages $1 billion a film. And it's going to have been a long time since we've had a Marvel movie. I still don't know that Black Widow is going to make $1 billion, but it's going to make a lot of money. It's going to make a lot of money. And I don't see it. Listen, the United States is still by far the biggest movie market in the world. Next up is China. But the United States is the biggest, North America is the biggest movie market in the world. And they need it to be big here. So I don't know, man. I don't see it. I think you are more likely to make changes to the TV shows. You don't make decisions on your big, possibly billion-dollar franchise movies based on a couple of TV shows you're doing. That's reverse priorities. Your first priority is your potentially billion-dollar film. That's your priority. You make your decisions around that. You don't make your decisions, at least by my logic, take it for what it is. You don't make the priority in your decision making a couple of TV shows. You make it the billion-dollar film. And based on that, I think it's unlikely. I think they want that thing released in the United States, the biggest movie market in the world. Again, if it turns out that the movie theaters don't open till like June of 2021, that situation can change. But for right now, where we're at today, I don't think it's likely. Anything can happen, but I don't think it's likely. All right, Dark Knight Rises just send in a $7 tip just to be nice. Thank you so much, Dark Knight Rises. Appreciate that, man. All right, also Dark Knight Rises writes, I have a question about the development of two films. One, The Apostle Paul starring Hugh Jackman, produced by Jackman, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon. I haven't seen anything lately about it. Two, the sequel to The Passion of the Christ. Thanks. I have no idea if either of them are happening. Let's start with Hugh Jackman. I remember hearing about The Apostle Paul, but I don't know if it ever got any movement. Yeah, as of right now, it's not even on Hugh Jackman's filmography at all. I remember hearing whispers of that before, but I never thought it became official. So I don't see anything about it. It's not on Hugh Jackman's IMDb. Let's see. It is listed right now as being in development, which could just mean another way of saying it ain't ever going to happen. So right now, Hugh Jackman does not have it listed on his upcoming projects. It is a project in and of itself that's listed as in development, which means it's sitting on a shelf somewhere and maybe never see the light of day. The sequel to Passion of the Christ, again, I don't know if it ever got any movement. I don't think any movement actually happened with it. Now, it was called Passion of the Christ. Resurrection was going to be the name of it. But yeah, I don't know that. I mean, for all I know, they shot the movie, but I don't think they did. But maybe for all I know, they shot the damn movie. I don't know. But I haven't heard about any movement on it whatsoever. I do know that Gibson was going to be back to write and direct it. I do know that Jim Caviezel was going to be back to star in it. But above that, I have heard nothing else about it. So the Apostle Paul, I got a feeling that one's not happening at all. Passion of the Christ 2, I simply have no idea where they are. I don't know if they've shot it already. I don't think they have. And I just, if it hasn't, I don't know that it'll ever actually happen. I don't know that it'll actually happen. So that's what I know right now. That's what I know right now. As soon as we know anything else, we'll definitely talk about it on the show for sure. All right, Scott writes, if you could have 5 movie stars come on your show as special guests, who would you want? Why? I don't do top 5, top 10, whatevers. I will tell you this. The one guy I have never had a chance to meet and interview that I would desperately want to. I've been very, very lucky in my career that I've pretty much had a chance to meet and interview just about everybody that I would want to meet and interview. Whether it's just meeting them and talking to them at some event, or whether it's interviewing them as a part of a junket or whatever, I've had a chance to basically meet and talk to them all. It's been great. The one guy I have not had a chance to meet or talk to or interview or anything that I would desperately love, if I could get him on this show via Zoom or in person or whatever, that I would give my less testy just to have him come down and do it, it's easily Steven Spielberg. I mean, I've met practically all the rest of them. I've met George Lucas. I've met Martin Scorsese. I mean, you name it. I've met them and had a chance to talk to them because of, a lot because I was at AMC. So I had a really good connection there. But the one guy I never did meet was Steven Spielberg. I had Steven Spielberg's mom make me lunch once. Yeah, it's true. I had an entertainment lawyer. Because I had made my movie The Anniversary, and he was kind of representing my movie. And he was also like a rabbi. He was like my entertainment lawyer, and he was also my rabbi, who was also a rabbi. And anyway, he said, let's go to lunch. I'm going to take you to this restaurant. And it was owned by Steven Spielberg's mom that he knew. And Steven Spielberg's mom actually came out and said, he introduced me to Steven Spielberg's mom, which was like, oh, this is Spielberg's mom. I had no idea that the music was playing. His mother was a world-class pianist. And so all the music that was playing in the restaurant I had no idea about that. But I've never, ever met Steven Spielberg. If I could have one guy, it would be Spielberg. That's who I would want, dude. All right. Scott also writes, hey, John, I'm really a big fan of Mark Harmon. He seems like a regular guy, very grounded, great professional. I'd like him to keep on going with NCIS, but if he steps down, who might be tapped to replace him? No idea. I've never watched. I can tell you honestly, even though it's been one of the most popular shows in the world for like over 10 years, I have never watched a single episode of NCIS. I mean, when I think of Mark Harmon, I think of Summer School. That's how far, when I think, hold on a second, let me bring it up. When I think of Mark Harmon, I go all the way back to me being a young teenager, Summer School. That's what I think of when I think of Mark Harmon. Oh, I forgot. Kirstie Alley was in that too. I totally forgot. Courtney Thorne-Smith was in that. Man. Oh yeah, man. I remember Summer School. Summer school. Yeah, so I've never seen a single episode of NCIS, so I have no idea what the show is like. I have no idea what the feel of the show is like. I have no idea what the characters are like. So unfortunately, I have no input whatsoever or thought or opinion on who could be tapped to replace. I've never even seen the show, so I have no idea. But man, he's made a career out of this. How long? Let me bring this up here quick. How long has NCIS been on the air? Since 2003. NCIS has been on since 2003. That's got to be one of the most successful scripted drama shows in the history of television. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And yet I have never watched a single episode, Scott. All right, next up, Bojax writes, 1 of 2. John, my take on your thoughts of Loki and Gamora being the same characters is that they are fundamentally different now. Yes, it's them, but they haven't had the exact same experiences that shaped them. If John Campea of 2020 died and replaced him with John Campea of 2015, we're dealing with a Campea that hasn't gone through some of the things that helped make you who you are today. And I find exploring that in a series or movie fascinating. Minor changes. Minor change. Extremely minor change. We're only talking about a couple of years removed. They are still the same characters. It is a cop-out. It's an absolute cop-out. Oh no, Gamora died. Oh, don't worry about it. She's back. Oh no, Loki died. He's back. And then, oh no, Loki died again. And then he's back. And then, oh no, Loki died again. Oh, and he's back again. It's still Loki. It's still Gamora. Yes, there are a couple of years of experiences. But I'm essentially the same guy I was in 2015. I've had a few different life experiences. Maybe I make a few decisions differently now today because of a few of those. But essentially, I'm still that guy. That's still me. If the John Campea life was a movie and they killed John Campea only to bring in John Campea from 2015, it's still John Campea. It's still John Campea. Yes, there are minor differences, but it's still that character. And that's the one thing, as much as I love the Marvel MCU, it still frustrates me how many times they go back to the fake death well. And again, like I said, it's eventually it starts, when they do it so much, it eventually starts to rob me of potentially really great emotional experiences in the cinema. They fake death people so many times that, you know, when Spider-Man dies at the end of Infinity War, and there were people in the theaters, oh no, boo-hoo, look how sad it is that Peter died. I'm like, okay, it's a good scene, but he's come back. He's coming back. Like, no death scenes have any meaning anymore. Oh, such a big tragic moment. Thanos throwing Gamora down. Oh no, Gamora died. Oh no, she'll be back. She'll be back. And so they've done it so often that even now when you've got Tony dying, I'm like, okay, it's a good scene. It is. It's a good scene. I like the scene, but it loses 80% of the emotional gut punch because we all know that he'll be back. We all know that he'll be back. It's different when you look at something like Sopranos or you look at Sons of Anarchy, because death in those properties have actual meaning. Because guess what? Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't watched Sons of Anarchy. You've had 8 years to do it, so whatever. But spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen Sons of Anarchy. But when Ope dies, it has 10 times the dramatic and emotional impact because you know he ain't coming back. There is an absolute finality. When Ope dies in that prison, he's gone. And because of that certainty, because of that reality, because of that finality, when Ope died in Sons of Anarchy, it had an emotional impact on me that no Marvel death ever can, because Marvel's deaths they never stick. They're simple minor plot devices that they'll either change in 5 minutes or in 3 years. They'll change. Oh, he died. Don't give the movie 5 more minutes. He'll be back. And if not in 5 minutes, give it a couple of years. They'll be back. They'll be back. In the case of Gamora, just give it 1 year till Endgame comes out. She'll be back. In the case of Loki, yet again for the 3rd time, just give it a few months. Loki will be back. Don't worry about it. So like when a death happens in the MCU, it's not that I don't care. Of course I care. The scenes are very well done. I don't really feel it 1/10 the amount that I would if when characters died, they died. Oh no, T'Challa's dusting. Oh, he'll be back. We already know they're going to do a Black Panther 2. Don't worry about it. He'll be back. He'll be back. Also, oh no, Nick Fury died as a result of the gunshot wounds. Oh, no, don't worry. He'll be back. He'll be back. Whereas you watch Sopranos and like pussy gets whacked. That when Bobby dies in Sons of Anarchy, that's it. He's dead. And that brings more meaning and consequences to the whole action of the narrative. And it's a night and day difference. Because they just keep going back to fake death. So when they do kill him, no big deal. They'll find one way or the other, the character will be back. Don't worry about it. They'll be back. Don't worry about it. And as much as I love the MCU, they have forever ruined death as a major event in their movies. They forever ruined it. Like, seriously, we could turn on Eternals and Kit Harington could get his head sliced off and then his body burned to vapors. I will still expect, I'm going to have no emotional reaction to that because I'm still going to expect that he's going to be back by the end of the movie. Because that's just what they do. It's what they do. So yes, it is a cop-out. It's absolutely a cop-out. Oh, it's not really Gamora. It's Gamora from 2 years ago. No, it's still Gamora. It's still Gamora. So anyway, that's just kind of, again, and I'm saying all this as a card-carrying major fan of the MCU. But them constantly doing that over and over and over again. Sometimes it's just straight, they're back, or left turn, oh, they never actually died, or, oh, it's them just from a different timeline. It's all the same thing. The character's never gone. And they'll be back, and they've robbed themselves of it. But anyway, I could go on about that. I've been talking about that as being a frustration of mine with the MCU for like 5 years. And I can clearly go on and ramble about this for 5 hours if I needed to. But yeah, that's just one of the things that is to me. It's still the same thing. It's just a cop-out. It's still the same thing. Anyway, Crashing Coyote writes, some of my fan casting for Avatar Netflix series for fun. Willem Dafoe as Boomy. Boomy, that would be interesting. Actually, you know what? Yeah, man, I can kind of see that. He would make a really good Boomy. Anyway, Nick Nolte as Iroh. I don't know if I see that. I have spoken. Well, this is, yeah, I don't see it. Grant Gustin as Zuko. Oh, I totally don't see that. Pulled off burnt face as Savitar, and he can act. I'll just pass that one over. Mark Hamill or Tom Cavanaugh as Fire Lord. No, I don't see that either. And finally, The Rock as the Boulder. The Rock as the Boulder. That one, yeah, I could see that one. I got to be honest with you, my film loving brother. I don't see many. Willem Dafoe's Boomy. I never would have thought of that, but now that you say it and I start thinking of Boomy, yeah, I'm totally now. Damn it! Now I'm going to have a hard time seeing anybody else's Boomy other than William Dafoe. Now that you've mentioned that, I don't see any of the rest. I don't see Nick Nolte or Grant Gustin or whatever. Certainly don't see Mark. Even though Mark Hamill did the voice of Fire Lord Ozai in the series, I don't see him playing that part. And certainly not Tom Cavanaugh. Yeah, I don't see any of the rest of them. But that first one, dude, that's kind of a little stroke of genius. That Willem Dafoe one, a little bit of a stroke of genius. All right, Bojax writes. One of two. Along the subject of fake MCU deaths, I've heard you talk about when the heroes disappeared in the snap. It doesn't matter because you know they'll be back. I have to say that Spider-Man scene with Tony gets me every time, even though I know he isn't. 2 of 2. Tom Holland's acting is so effective in that moment. It reminds me of when I see Leonard Nimoy in Wrath of Khan. I know Spock will be back, but the acting and weight of the scene helps me buy into the stakes and finality of the moment. All right, I will say this. Regarding the scene itself, I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. Regarding that scene itself, it's a great scene. There's no taking away from it. It is a great, well-acted, well-composed scene. It really is. And despite the fact that I know he's going to be back, and therefore this death scene is meaningless, it still had, for me, some emotional impact just because of how well it was portrayed. By, yes, Tom Holland, but also by Robert Downey Jr. It is a well-performed, well-composed scene that definitely has an impact. My argument would be it is also robbed of a lot of the additional impact it would have had if I thought for a second that that was actually Peter Parker dying. But it's not. We knew he'd be back, so it takes away a lot of it. It was still great. Don't get me wrong. It was still great. But it would have had 5 times the impact if I didn't already 100% without any uncertainty know that he's not really dying. He's going to be back. Just give it a minute. He'll be back. You know what I mean? Regarding the Wrath of Khan one with Nimoy, the big difference there is this. We all really did think that was it. Spock had died. We all thought Spock, that was it. Spock was dead. Now we know they brought him back. But Star Trek really wasn't in the habit of doing that nearly as much as the MCU, right? And so when Leonard Nimoy, when Spock died, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. You know, when Spock died, I have been and always shall be your friend. When he dies in that scene, it is a punch to the gut because I had no reason to believe the first time I saw it that wasn't it. This was the death of Spock. You know what I mean? Because they hadn't done death and rebirth so many times in Star Trek up to that point that we had any reason to believe that otherwise. That was part of the problem with the Spider-Man scene. There had been so many fake deaths that now we expect it to be a fake death. That wasn't the case with Spock dying. That wasn't the case. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing there. But to your point, Bojack, it was still, that Spider-Man dying scene was still a great scene. Make no mistake about it. Still was great. James Wheeler writes, hello, John. Hello, James. Have you ever seen the movie Femme Fatale with Rebecca Romijn? If you have, what did you think of it? I believe I have. Let me sometimes I rush to say I didn't see it, and then I look it up. It's like, oh yeah, I did. I believe I've seen this one. Hold a second. Fatale. Oh yeah, the one with Antonio Banderas. Yes, I have. Not a good film, sir, if I remember correctly. This thing now this is really old. This came out in like 2000. Hold a second. 2002, I stand correct. Came out in 2002. This is an old film. I love Rebecca Romijn Stamos. I guess today it's just Rebecca Romijn. I love her. And by the way, her as number 1 in the new Star Trek, I loved her in that too. I think she's great. I did not think this was a very good movie. I did not think that it was very good. It is one of the sexiest posters though. I mean, let me bring up this poster. It is one of the absolute sexiest posters. Ooh. I mean, seriously, Rebecca Romijn is like one of the most male or female actor or actress in the history of Hollywood. She is one of the most beautiful creatures, male or female, ever to be. I mean, she's just gorgeous. To this day, she's stupid gorgeous. But I gotta admit, man, I haven't thought much about this movie since the first time I saw it so long ago. I didn't really like it all that much. Thanks for that, James. All right, next up, let's see. Jose Sanchez writes, I never understood why Indiana Jones films were considered a family franchise, especially Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, both being violent and full of gore. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. What do you think? Anyway, love you guys, stay golden. Yeah, I gotta somewhat agree with you here. Like, if you were to ask me, how would you define the Indiana Jones films? Oh, where like Indy shoots a guy in the street and a guy plunges his fist into the chest of another guy and pulls out his beating heart only to watch it erupt into flames? Yeah, family films. I gotta admit, and I agree with you, I would not personally categorize the Indiana Jones films as family films. I do believe to a degree they're relatively family friendly. You know, like nudity, sex, profanity, not a lot of that kind of stuff in there. So I think to a degree they are relatively family friendly, but I would not define them as family films. So I would agree with you on that. Because, like, yeah, you're right. You go to the first of all, Nazis melting with the power of God from the up. Like, yeah, not something you want to sit down with little Susie. Daddy, what's happening? Don't worry about it, kid. Go get daddy a beer. I don't know. They're really, I think you're right. I would not categorize them as family films. Relatively family friendly for the most part, but I agree. Can't qualify the Indiana Jones films as family films. Dark Knight Rises writes, it really bugs me when highly paid actors don't prepare adequately for their roles. Lately, what you said about Robert Pattinson not getting built for Batman is the latest example. Can studios come down hard on stars for all the money they pay them? Well, I don't know. Listen, if you hire somebody with a reputation for something and they do the thing they have the reputation for, I mean, yeah, shame on them, but also that's partly your responsibility. One of the guys who unfortunately comes to mind quickly for me, even though I am a big fan of this guy, is Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis sleepwalks through almost all of his movies recently. The most recent example of which was, hold on a second, let me just bring up Bruce Willis's, but is Death Wish. Let me just bring up Death Wish here. Hold on a second. He has, for a long time, you can just tell watching the movies he does, that he does not care about these movies. He's just, I'm going to show up and do the movie and whatever. And Death Wish, that he just did, why can't I find Death Wish anywhere? Where is it? The Glass. I mean, I thought he would try for Glass. I don't even think he put in much effort on Glass. Oh, there's Death. Yeah, then he did Death Wish in 2018, which I was excited about that. Eli Roth was directing it. I like Eli Roth. Eli Roth was directing it. Bruce Willis was going to do it. It's based on a classic. Vincent D'Onofrio, Kingpin from Daredevil was in it, which is fantastic. You got Elizabeth Shue in there, who's also in The Boys right now. Who doesn't love Elizabeth Shue? I mean, there was just so much going for it. And you'd think with a film like that, an iconic film like Death Wish, and the responsibility of carrying on that name, you'd think he would have given a shit, and he didn't. He clearly didn't. Now, if Bruce Willis sucked as an actor, I wouldn't mind, because it's like, oh, well, that's just how good he is. But we know he's a great actor when he wants to be. When Bruce Willis gives a crap, he's a great actor. I'm not going to say one of the top 5 best actors in the world, but he's a great actor when he wants to be. And then you just see all these movies he does lately where he clearly doesn't give a crap. But today, he's got that reputation. So if you hire him for your movie and he just sleepwalks through it, yeah, shame on him for that, but you got no one to blame but yourself. You got no one to blame but yourself. I would love to see Bruce Willis make a huge comeback, man. I would love to see it because he's so good and so fun to see on screen. But yeah, there's not really much recourse unless you violate something that you put in the language of the contract. Then there's really nothing the studio can do about it. All right. James Welsh writes, you say you don't know when a movie could win 11 Oscars again. I think this year Dune has the director and acting, you probably mean nomination potential as well as visual effects. This is, of course, if the movie is good, but it has the potential. First trailer will be telling. I don't know, man. Like, listen, the reality is every movie has the potential to be an 11 Oscar winning movie. Every movie has the potential. But the fact of the matter is, it is so rare. It's so rare. Like, even one of the de facto agreed upon by everybody in the world greatest films of all time, The Godfather. It didn't win 11 Academy Awards. It is understood by everybody on the planet, one of the greatest films, if not the greatest movie of all time. Not to me, but a lot of people would call The Godfather the greatest movie of all time. And it's hard to argue against them. Or The Godfather 2. And neither of those won 11 Oscars. Dune has the potential to be really good, but being really good and saying there's any kind of chance for it to win 11 Academy Awards, out of the 20, 30, 40,000 films that have come out, 3 have ever done it. Only 3 out of the tens of thousands of eligible Oscar contending films, Oscar eligible films, I should say, throughout the history of cinema, 3 have done it. Is it possible it could happen again? It's possible. But is the possibility high enough, particularly for a movie like Dune, which I'm hoping is going to be great. I have no reason to believe it's not going to be great, but only 3 films of history have ever done it. I don't think there's a realistic enough chance that we can really talk about it, at least until we watch the movie. Right now, it's way too premature to go, this has the potential to win 11 Academy Awards. Way premature for that, I think. Way premature. Now, once we watch them, and the trailer, ignore the trailer. How many times have we seen magnificent trailers to bad movies? So don't worry about the trailer. Once we see the movie, then we'll go, okay, you know what? Best director, best picture, best screenplay, best actor, best actress, best supporting actor, best supporting actress, best cinematography, best costume design, best hair and makeup, best visual effects, best sound editing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, maybe once we see it, we'll all go, this is like one of the single greatest motion pictures of all time. Maybe then, but that's a stretch. It's a stretch. Because 3 films out of tens of thousands to ever do it, it's way premature for a movie we've never even seen one frame of yet to say it has the potential to win 11 Academy Awards. I would say let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not get ahead of ourselves on that. But I am damn looking forward to that movie, James. I am damn looking forward to that movie. If it comes out this year, we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up. And our final question today, which is good because we've already passed the 2-hour mark. Michael writes, John, be honest. Is that Pokemon Go story about your wife why you don't like Detective Pikachu? We all know it's deep down. No, it really isn't. And by the way, I didn't dislike Detective Pikachu. And you guys, if you guys have watched my show for long enough, you know, I was really excited for that movie. I thought the trailers were killer. I really like, particularly the second trailer. I thought the second trailer was great. And I'm a huge Ryan Reynolds guy. I love Ryan Reynolds, good Canadian kid. And all that kind of stuff, but it just, the movie wasn't that good. It's just not that good. I wanted it to be, but it's just not that good. I actually ended up preferring Sonic, and I didn't love Sonic either. I didn't think Sonic was great, but I like Sonic. And I liked it more than I did Detective Pikachu. So, yeah, that's the bottom line on that, unfortunately. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and being a part of today's show. And a special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions. Number 1, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number 2, you supported this channel while you did. And don't forget, you can send in a question to be part of the live questions part of the shows anytime at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You can see that link and just click on it in the top of the description of the video. And you can send that in anytime. And if you send it in between shows, yours will be one of the first that gets answered on the next show. And don't forget, the show returns on Monday. And by the way, guys, if you want to send in a question or topic as a potential main topic on the John Campea Show, well, just go on over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. You're going to see a form there. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free, no tip required. Hit submit, and then I choose 4 to 5 of those every day on the John Campea Show to make main topics of the show that day. So just go ahead, if you've got a main topic, send it in there, and maybe, there's no guarantee obviously, but maybe you'll see your topic or question selected as a main topic on the John Campea Show. But if you want to guarantee it gets brought up in the live questions part of the show, again, streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. All right, guys. That will do it for today's show. We'll be back again on Monday. Have a fabulous rest of your weekends, my friends. And remember, stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves. For God's sakes, please be concerned about taking care of the people around you. That'll do it for me, guys. My name is John Campea. Until next time, my friends, bye-bye.